Millions in Syria and Iraq are facing water shortages as the region's longest river, the Euphrates, dries up.
The modern-day countries of Turkey, Syria, Iraq and Saudi Arabia all make up the watershed of the Euphrates River. During the spring and early summer, snow melts in the mountains of eastern Turkey, causing about 90% of the basin's flow. During this season, the entire length of the river typically reaches flood levels. The original Iraqi settlers relied on the Euphrates River for transportation and agriculture for at least 6,000 years. In doing so, irrigated agricultural empires grew and ultimately collapsed, leaving behind beautiful ruins across much of Mesopotamia. For a long period of time prior to World War II, Iraq was the sole Euphrates Basin country to place significant demands on the river's water supply. But by now, you must know that something alarming has been uncovered recently. The shrinking river is becoming more and more ominous by the day. In this video, we will be discussing the drying up of the Euphrates River. The Euphrates is the largest river in all of Southwest Asia. The river has made it possible for people from different backgrounds to live side by side. Since the start of recorded history around 4000 BC, with the Sumerian and Mesopotamian civilizations, and continuing with the civilizations of Babylon and Assyria, the Euphrates has played a crucial role in the development and spread of Middle Eastern communities. Like the Tigris, the Euphrates was instrumental in the rise of the Mesopotamian Empire. Many ancient cities were located near rivers because of the convenience they provided for trade, travel, and farming. Food and water were also made available to the newcomers thanks to the rivers. They eventually become a part of the agricultural, commercial, and transportation infrastructure. Large urban centers in the Middle East rely on rivers such as the Tigris and Euphrates for their water needs. Even though over 94% of its water source comes from Turkish highlands, its drainage basin is just about 30% located in Turkey. The upper Euphrates flows southeast into Iraq and Syria over a series of tiny gorges and valleys. The Balikh River in Iraq and the Kabur in northeastern Turkey are two of the Euphrates' major tributaries. Only two sources supply the water for the Euphrates. The Euphrates normally stops receiving any new water at a point far downstream from where it first enters the river. The Shat al-Arab River begins its journey to the Persian Gulf from its source north of Basra in southern Iraq, where it meets the Tigris River. Because of the abundance of natural resources present in the river's basin, a number of ancient megacities rose along the riverbanks. The demise of some of these communities has hardly started. All throughout its course, the Euphrates has been an important part of the lives of its people. Massive hydroelectric facilities, irrigation systems, and pipelines with potential to transport water over great distances has resulted in thousands of people depending on rivers for fundamental requirements like energy and water. Aleppo, the largest city in Syria, is located 75 kilometers west of the river basin, making Lake Assad an extremely important water supply. Along the lake shore, there is a modest fishing industry that is governed by the government. A recently repaired power connection allows electricity to flow from the Iraqi Haditha Dam to Baghdad. Historically, the Tigris and Euphrates have been a source of cooperation between Iraq, Turkey, Syria, and Iran. The world's attention should be focused on protecting these rivers, which are among the most endangered in the world. There has been a 40% decrease in water flow over the past 40 years as the four nations along their lengths have diverted the water for human consumption, agriculture, and industry. The water is mostly used by Turkey and Iraq. To ensure the safety of the rivers, they concur that both countries should work together. They provide water to 60 million people who rely on it. However, a compromise is impossible due to political and historical factors. The Associated Press, or AP, has recently interviewed people in Turkey and Iraq, including government officials and farmers. The Associated Press discovered that Iraq is worried about a projected 20% decline in food production in the future, while Turkey tries to balance Iraq's and its own demands. "I don't see a solution," stated former Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi. If it meant sacrificing Turkey's own interests, he said, would Turkey do that? Especially if it means that their farms and people would suffer because of our increased need for water. Turkey wants to construct an additional 11 dams on the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. They are a part of the GAP project in southeastern Anatolia. The plan's end result is to improve the southeastern region by way of increased agricultural and power generation. Turkey's initial goal was to irrigate about 1.8 million acres. However, we were only asked to pay $1.05 million. The half target has been reached halfway. Turkish officials claim that modern farming practices require only 1/2 as much water as traditional practices, making them a requirement for farmers receiving water from GAP. However, every drop of water that is used for agriculture or other reasons in Turkey is one fewer drop that may be used in Iraq. The two rivers that flow from beyond Iraq's boundaries provide almost all of the country's water supply. An official single truth report was compiled by the Iraqi Ministry of Water in 2014. The study hasn't been made public, but it has been viewed by AP journalists. The report predicted that Iraq's water supply would become inadequate to satisfy demand within 2 years. It predicted that by 2035, food production would drop by 20% due to water scarcity. In 2022, we will witness the results of these forecasts. A number of lakes had dried up, crops had failed, and thousands of Iraqis were leaving the country. Long-running negotiations between Turkey with Iraq have yet to produce a lasting accord. In the eyes of the Turkish government, the river system begins in Turkish territory. It weighs requirements and determines how much water to release to the next section. Iraq, however, views ownership as shared and seeks a more permanent accord with clear boundaries. Water disputes between Turkey and Iraq are handled by Veysel Eroglu. He told the Associated Press that Turkey would not agree to the release of a certain amount of water due to the unpredictability of rivers. Eroglu stated that Turkey might approve of establishing a ratio release conditional on Syria and Iraq disclosing their water consumption patterns. Because of the frequent turnover among Iraq's water officials, negotiations between the two countries have stalled in recent years. Also, Ankara has stressed the importance of efficient water management, urging Iraq to do so. An Iraqi envoy claimed it was a mistake that his country had admitted to the Turks that its farmers were wasting 70% of the country's water on obsolete practices. As a result, Turkey stepped up its pressure on Iraq to change its ways. The average amount of water sent to Iraq by the Tigris 10 years ago was 625 cubic meters per second. Officials in the Iraqi water sector estimate that the country now receives only 36% of this amount due to the decreased precipitation and a large dam in Turkey. Since energy is generated by the dam, the water level downstream must be allowed to drop. But when exactly will depend on the decisions of Turkish authorities. In order to generate energy, they must maintain a water level in the reservoir 500 meters above sea level at all times. But they have to deal with erratic water levels in the reservoir. Turkish officials claim that by controlling the river's flow, they can aid Iraq during floods by holding more water and during droughts by releasing more. However, Iraqi officials claim that their dependence on temporary deals with Turkey makes long-term planning impossible. They have the ability to both restrict and unleash water flow. We need a water accord immediately, merely to meet the bare minimal needs in Iraq, stated Hatem Hamid. He currently oversees the nation's water policy as the director of the National Center for Water Resources Management. Hamid controls the amount and distribution of water in Iraq once it is diverted from the Tigris River via the Mosul Dam. Hamid has made significant cuts in preparation for 2022 when shortages are predicted. Half of the previous agricultural water allocations were eliminated. Due to these reductions, less water is reaching the marshes in southern Iraq. As a result, there was a serious ecological crisis since the marshes weren't getting enough water to flush the salt from the ocean. Hamid attempted a solution, but the situation was already hopeless. Dead animals, poisoned by salty water, drift near the riverbanks in the Chibiash marshes. Everything in the marshes that were once so lush and green has withered and turned yellow during the past 2 years. After 2 years of little river water, the sea salt level has risen. A farmer named Obid Hafez once sowed wheat across more than 1,000 acres. His sons left for the cities in search of employment, and his once thriving farm in southern Iraq is now abandoned. It's all over, he declared. That's all for this video. Leave your thoughts on this terrifying thing that is happening. Also take a minute out and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned. See you soon.